welcome back to episode 2 of MVP's podcast. I am Mia, and today's episode will be talking about injury. Injuries are a very, very common aspect of being an athlete, and whether or not you have been injured or you know somebody that's been injured, it's very important to talk about injuries because injuries can have a serious impact on your mental health. Now, for this episode, I have a special guest from Lewis and Clark named Dylan Souza. Dylan is a cross-country and track and field athlete who has experienced a great deal of injuries, to say the least, and he's really reflected on his experience with these injuries and how it affected his mental health. He has a lot of really good things to say, and I'm really excited to share this interview with you. So let's just get right into that. Okay, I'm just going to start off by saying thank you for allowing me to interview today, and let's just go from the start. So can you start off by sharing a little bit of your journey as a Division III student athlete, including the sports you've been involved in and your overall experience in college athletics?
Yeah. So my time here has been it's been up and down, to say the least. I came into college COVID year and I didn't know what to expect. My thought of being a student athlete was a little closer to the movies, I'd say, and not really like the mental challenges, you're on the track 24/7, you're recovering 24/7. And as I came in here my freshman year, I had previous injuries from high school. I had like 5 stress fractures in my knee. And basically, my orthopedic surgeon in SF, told me that if I get one more stress fracture in my knee, I would have to come back to SF and get surgery. And everything was going well, creating friends. And I felt like the the sharp pain in my knee, and it felt just like a stress fracture. I was like, oh gosh, like I don't know what I'm gonna do personally. And it was in both knees as well. It wasn't just one knee. So I ended up going back home my freshman year, and I got double knee surgery. I got one February and then one in June. So I was in my bed in SF for San Francisco for like 6 months straight, and that was pretty isolating to say the least. And it was hard to come back from.
Yeah, wow, that is a really tough time. And the isolating part that's like, I feel like what people don't talk about the most, like how lonely it feels, even though you know so many other people have gone through similar things. But in the moment, it just feels like you're the only one. So I can totally relate to that. And I know that a lot of other athletes can. So thank you for sharing that. Transitioning from kind of the isolation piece, as many know, physical injuries often have both a mental and emotional toll on the student athlete. How did dealing with these injuries affect your mental health?
They really affected my mental health. This is a tough question. At first, it's it feels like it feels like there's hope. I feel like all through my life I've had this instilled hope that I'm gonna reach the end and become successful in like the obstacle. I had that instilled hope for the first knee surgery, but after the second knee surgery, or like during the second knee surgery, I didn't like have that hope anymore, and I couldn't explain why. I didn't understand those emotions. I just constantly like woke up, felt drowsy and sad, felt alone. I started being more to myself, and it was really hard for me to come out of my shell and really tell anyone. I started feeling like I had no purpose, and I didn't know how that felt until I reached that point, and I didn't know who I can tell because I sort of felt like the world around me wasn't supportive. I was angry at the world around me. I felt anything I told someone, it wasn't safe with them. And I got to a point where I started isolating myself more and more. I started having like mind games and starting being angry at the people around me. And yeah, my identity was lost because I've been playing the sport for so much of my years. You know, my whole personality just revolved around the sport, and now it's gone. I didn't really know how to handle it.
Yeah, gosh, that's That's like the biggest thing I've talked about in some of my other podcasts is like athletic identity and just how much your athletic identity contributes to how you handle injuries and like other stressors and stuff. Well, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate your vulnerability. And I know it's not easy to talk about, but I do think it's important, as my last episode was Break the Stigma. So you are helping do that. So thank you. Next question. Were there ever moments where you felt pressured to push through your injuries and the mental side effect that came with your injuries to either meet your team's expectations, your coaching expectations, or your own personal expectations?
Yeah, this is gonna sound really weird, but I really didn't have expectations for myself because I was recovering for like a year and a half. So those expectations were slowly going away. Let's say I have a 3 month period to recover and like start walking again, I would hit that. But then it would always creep in my mind like I'm not running. I'm going out practice, I'm seeing my teammates get better, but I'm not getting better with them. So those negative thoughts kept creeping in my head and I kept going to the trainers alone. I wouldn't have practice with nobody. My coaches wouldn't hear about my training plan. Everything was alone. And my teammates, they were there for me, but I'd say there's a sense of isolation because it's hard. It was hard for me to tell them what was going on with like mentally and all of the depression I was feeling, all the isolation, anxiety. So that was the hardest thing.
Uh, it's just so hard. I empathize so hard. I haven't really been through like, I mean, it's kind of hard to like compare injuries and stuff because somebody's worst injury is not somebody else's worst injury. But yeah, just like having people to talk to is so important. And I feel like, again, it's just why it's so important to break the stigma, to make it feel like it is okay to talk about, because it is okay to talk about, you know? Recovery is tough, as any injured athlete would know, and the missing out piece and like seeing your teammates is brutal. Can you share some insight on how you managed rehab physically and mentally, and if there were any support systems that played a crucial role during this time?
I got you. Said like subject off time just for physical therapy. So after all my classes were done, even if it wasn't the same practice plan as my teammates, because they're all running and stuff, I would just go straight to PT, get my workout done. The hardest thing was like I mentioned before, I had the same PT plan and no one was really overseeing me but the trainers and it wouldn't change for 5 months. So at times I just felt like a robot and I was mindlessly doing it. But like those times I say it's helpful to push through because at the end of the day you do feel rewarded. If you weren't to do it, then it just like there's more doubt that creeps in. And it's honestly amazing, like building a connection with one of the trainers and just telling them how you feel. They're really understanding. So that's what helped me through. I built like a good relationship with Tara in the LC training room. Also, I would like to mention my mom, my dad. It was great to call them at all times and tell them what I was going through because they were really the only people that knew. I also like constantly I've had a great roommate. He's on the team. His name's Brendan Creeks. He's helped me a lot through like mental health, and I also communicated greatly like with our coach. I would like go in to his like office, and I would just break down crying to him like every like 2 weeks. It was terrible, but it got to the point where I needed to do that just to continue being in Portland, being at Lewis and Clark. I was having like constant doubts of going home, stopping college, like the constant doubt of am I good enough just kept flowing through my head. I'm grateful for those people.
Yeah, the support is really huge in the rehab process. Just like that external motivation kind of getting you like through the harder days and stuff. It's really important. Well, thanks for shouting them out. Okay, so balancing academics, athletics, and recovery all at once is a lot. So, how did you manage your time effectively, especially with these injuries?
During this time, I honestly didn't manage my time effectively. I would get my PT done. I would be consistent, but everything felt like everything was just secondary in my life. I felt so many like depressing and anxious emotions that 4 hours of the day I might just like sleep in. I might wake up and just stay in my bed and close the curtains. Like I didn't want to talk to anyone and I was isolating myself. And that was my way of coping with it.
I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you sharing your experience somewhere that's going to be posted public. So I do really appreciate that. So thank you for sharing.
Thanks for doing this stuff too. We
Yeah.
like our school needs this and your school needs this. Every school needs this, you know?
Yeah. Thank you. You kind of talked about this, but in what ways did your injuries impact your relationships with your teammates, your coaches, family, friends, etc.? Did you feel that there was a shift in dynamics or if you had to adapt to changes in your role on the team?
Yes, this is a good question. I feel like I was more quiet with the team. I had less of a role as well with the team because I wasn't practicing with them, and that's where most of the relationship is built upon. I felt like I wasn't good enough with like for the team as well. I wasn't providing any talent. I was just cheering my guys on, but there's not a lot that comes your way when you're just cheering, I would say. You're in the sport to compete, and it was hard. It was hard feeling like in the moment I wasn't getting enough support, but at the same time I wasn't getting that support that I wanted because it was really hard for me to be vulnerable. So it's just it just sucks. There's it's like a double head snake that's looking at you. Like weird metaphor, but like if you're not vulnerable, people around you aren't gonna know. And then let's say you're not vulnerable, you're gonna start building hatred towards those people and resentment. So it's just hard to be in like a weird spot and not feel comfortable enough to share those emotions.
Yeah, that's a great point. It takes a lot. I talked about it in the last episode that there's kind of this like misconception that seeking help and like being vulnerable is weak. But when you really think about it, it's the complete opposite. Like it takes so much strength and courage to be able to admit that something's not right. So I applaud you for that, even if it did take time, because everybody's on their own path. So it just matters that, you're taking the steps to get there. So good work.
Thank you.
Resilience in general is huge when it comes to being an athlete. How did facing and overcoming injuries contribute to your personal growth and resilience as an athlete and as an individual?
It just like allowed me to mature and grow as a person more. I don't take too many things for granted anymore with the running. I'm more excited, I'm more consistent, but also like I know when I'm going through one of those negative phases that I still go through even outside of the injury. I know it's going to come to an end, and I remember the good days instead of always facing the bad days, I would say. I'm a lot more in tune with my emotions and as well as a lot more genuine with the people around me. And it's easier for me to ask for help. It's easier for me to support others who are like going through what I went through. And like that's the biggest motivator right now for when I go out there and compete. It's just to remember the place I was and like how hard it was for me to get to the place I am right now.
Wow, that is very powerful. And yeah, it's so hard, but good work. I don't have anything else to say. It's just like it's awesome to hear the introspective mindset towards it all. And it's awesome to hear people acknowledge the things that they gained even through the really, really hard stuff. Kind of like silver lining, having that optimism. It's a lot more powerful than people realize. Small school Division III athletic communities are notorious for being very strong. In what ways did your experience with injuries shape your perspective on what contributes to a strong athletic community?
I'd just say knowing all the resources that are available to me, they're really easy to access. Like, for example, I would go to my school's counseling program and I'd get counseling from my school. It's easy to stay in touch and build a relationship with your trainers. So I did that. The only thing hard was maintaining a role on the team just because I was gone for 2 years. And it was hard building a relationship with the coach at the time. But I still like stayed motivated because I was there watching the meets and there for team camp. So I was able to build a closer connection with my guys. I guess that's the biggest thing.
I like what you said about the resources thing, just kind of being aware of what is available. is super important, and I think not something that many people think about, even if you don't need it right now. Just having that like proactive mindset towards it, I think is could make a big difference. I think this one's a good one to end on more of like a positive note slash advice. Looking back, is there any advice that you would give to fellow student athletes who may be going through similar challenges with injuries? What lessons have you learned that you think would be valuable to share with others in a similar situation?
I would say, like, don't forget the person you are. Always be yourself. Be vulnerable. Like, just stay in tune with your emotions. And if you're feeling bad one day, don't let that, don't let that stop you from going along with the process. Don't let that stop you from going to the PT. Don't let that stop you from going to the trainers, and just communicate. Communicate with your coaches, communicate with your teammates, because everybody has gone through those same emotions, but they're too scared to admit it. And unfortunately, like, that's a stigma we have today, especially with like men's sports. We're taught to conceal our emotions, we're taught to hide our emotions. And those are like just constraints that aren't like authentic at all. You be yourself, you talk with your close friends through it, you're gonna get through it. You're gonna be just fine. You're gonna come out really strong. You're at the other end.
I love that. Thank you so much. I like how it was kind of like a list. Makes it easy to remember. Is there anything that you wanted to add?
Okay, I'll just talk about like my lowest moment, just to be vulnerable. I'd say like the lowest moment, like I mentioned before, was like going into coach's office and like crying to him constantly, like just talking through my feelings. And it was nice that I had a person to talk through those feelings. And like going home, crying to my roommate, Creeks, talking through those feelings. I even got to a point my junior year where I was hiding my emotions so much and feeling so isolated that the that coach had to email one of the trainers and put me on like a like don't hurt yourself type type of list. Like basically just check in with this person, you know? And at the time I was constantly just isolating myself, and it came to that conclusion, like those emotions and those thoughts I had were out of my control. It was so scary. It was out of my control, and I had to let my roommate know, and he watched over me for like a weekend until like I got my thoughts back into control, and I was able to continue to school, able to continue running. And I just like appreciate my friends here, and I appreciate the community back home as well.
Again, that social support part is so huge in the rehabilitation process and like the coping process. And it breaks my heart just to think about people who don't have that or think they don't have that, because in reality, I feel like there's always somebody that's going to be willing to help. It's just a matter of being vulnerable and asking for it. So,
And like in the midst of it, it felt like it was never gonna end. But the biggest thing, it will end. And I don't even like know how to explain it, but it does end, and you come out the other side much stronger.
well, thank you so much. That was awesome. I really, really appreciate you allowing me to interview you today for MVP. Your story is relatable to so many people. And again, I can't express enough how much you sharing is helping break the stigma. So, yeah, thank you so much. That was awesome, as I said a few moments ago. But I can't, again, thank Dylan enough for being so vulnerable and sharing everything that he had to say. The injury experience is not fun, it's not pretty, and it is really hard. I personally can relate to Dylan with the feelings of isolation. You know, you feel like I said earlier, you feel like you're the only one that is going through it. And it's really hard to remind yourself that like millions of other people have gone through it. So, again, that's just why talking about it and sharing experiences with one another is super important. And while it may be hard to talk about, it can really have a positive impact. I didn't experience my first injury until I was 18 in my senior year of high school. And prior to that, I really didn't understand the mental toll that being taken out of your passion it would have on you. So that was really eye-opening and a learning moment for me, being injured in that time of my life. And in that time, I had great coaches who were super supportive and teammates that, drove me to and from school every day and made sure I felt included. And it really made all the difference. My injury in college was kind of the same. There were areas that I wish were a little bit better in my social support category. Overall, I had pretty good social support throughout my injury experiences. But that being said, some people feel like they don't, like we kind of talked about in the podcast. My experience with both of my injuries, again, opened my eyes to what it's like to be the injured athlete, but it also opened my eyes to how to be there as the non-injured teammate to an injured teammate. So I kind of thought it would be good to talk about some strategies and tips on how to be there for your injured teammate as the non-injured teammate. First and foremost, just having empathy and an understanding of what they're going through and allowing them their space is huge. Allow them to be frustrated, to be sad, to be mad, because those are not bad feelings to have, especially going through something like a severe injury. So just acknowledging that I'm here for you, like I feel you, I know what you're going through, or maybe you don't know what they're going through, but like you can see it, and letting them know that you are there for them can have a really big impact. Kind of same concept, communicating to your teammate, like, hey, I'm here for you. Like, text me, call me, we can hang out, I can pick you up, whatever. Just that communication, that reinforcement that, hey, I'm here for you, makes a big difference. This one's a big one, including your injured teammate in conversations, in the jokes going around, sharing how practice went, those kind of things. For me, feeling included made me excited and more motivated to get back on the court. And fortunately, when I was in high school, my coach did a really good job of making sure that I still felt like I was a part of the team. Next, having patience. Understanding that injury rehabilitation takes time, and being patient with your teammate and everything that they're going through is a big one. Now, another sort of tactic that may help with distracting your teammate is distractions. So this could be things like joking around, telling stories, different activities based on the athlete's comfort level and ability to do those things, just kind of anything to take their mind off of the injury, because they're probably already having a lot of conversations about their injury in rehab with athletic trainers, physical therapists, etc. So giving them an outlet to talk about something else for once is awesome. Another one is educating yourself. This could be educating yourself on the injury that your teammate faced and, educating yourself on the recovery of that, or how can you bounce back from this, or what kind of exercises can you do, and just kind of being there to understand the recovery process, again, allows you the opportunity to really empathize with what they're going through, because you would know exactly what they are going through. Next is encouraging professional support, seeking professional support. This goes with breaking the stigma, of course, and if you see your teammate really struggling and, they're having a hard time talking about it, there's nothing wrong with just casually mentioning, hey, have you thought about seeking professional help? There's resources out there. You should use them. Just, again, showing them that you're comfortable talking about things like that might give them more encouragement to seek out that professional help, knowing that you would or you encourage it. Now, the last one I want to share is just celebrate the small dubs with them. Celebrating the small dubs could look like, they reached a milestone at physical therapy, and you really acknowledge that and show them how proud you are of them for making that milestone, even though it may seem small to them, it may seem small to you. Just that positive reinforcement is a really big motivator for many people, especially people who are going through a really hard time. Now, everybody is different, so some of these tactics/tips might not be the best fitting for a certain teammate, but they're always worth a shot, and There's so many different things that go into injury recovery, your personality, your coping abilities, your previous exposure to injuries. Those all can seriously affect your ability to mentally cope with these injuries. So that's all I had to share today. I, again, want to thank Dylan for the interview. It was awesome to hear from him about the way he overcame his challenges and how he learned from them and how he is willing to spread the really hard times that he went through just to help break that stigma. So stay tuned for episode 3 coming soon. I will see you next time.